My name's Paul Roosevelt, and I'm Professor of Energy and Building Performance at the UCL Energy Institute. I'm also Principal Investigator for the GemDev project, which convened this session. And I would like to give special thanks to my colleagues Harsh Jakta, Julia Tomei, and Rita Lambert for their organization of the panel. We have three presentations which deal with different but strongly related topics. The first of these will come from Liliana Sara, which will cover the findings and recommendations from the early stages of the GemDev project in Lima. GemDev is grounded energy modeling for equitable urban planning in the global south. And I won't say more about it than that because I'm sure Liliana will tell you more in her presentation. The second presentation comes from Shiraz Harani of the Mahila Housing Trust in India. They're also partners in the GemDev project, but his presentation on enabling just transition of the nexus of housing and energy covers work undertaken outside of the GemDev project. I hope you've all had a chance to view the video presentation from Ulilish on linkages between women's position in household and energy choices, which is based on a comparative analysis of Rwanda, Honduras, and Nepal. Yuli will give a brief summary of this paper as the third presentation in this slot. All of our presentations, presenters have been asked to keep to tight allocated time slots with the aim of leaving around 20 minutes for question and answers and discussion before we have to close the session at 12:30. So without further delay in the proceedings, I'd like to ask Liliana to start us off with her presentation on the GemDev findings.
Well, good morning. Thanks for this introduction, Paul. I am on the back of my PPT. I have to come back, sorry. First of all, I want to thanks for this opportunity to share our findings and what we are developing here in Peru, in Lima, particularly in relation to the GemDev project. These are the three cases we are studying in José Carlos Mariátegui, El Agustino, and Barrios Altos, which are one in the periphery area of Lima, in the hilly areas. El Agustino is also in a hill, but also it has around 40 years old time of existence. José Carlos Mariátegui is newer. And Barrios Altos is in the center of Lima, quite close to the historic center, so it's even older. So we have three types of cases being analyzed during the project. And we have found out that there is, of course, an inequitable land access, which contributes to spatial fragmentation and unplanned urban poor areas with high physical and environmental risk. The access to energy infrastructure is difficult, is slow, and does not keep up with self-urbanization process. As you see in the picture, it's the hilly areas of José Carlos Mariátegui are quite dangerous, and the people themselves build their roads, the playing areas to build the houses with their own hands even sometimes. So as a consequence, we have a low quality electricity connections, which prevent the development of productive activities. So the labor generation is quite difficult for them because they don't have good electric connections. And there is a lack of public lighting, which contributes to insecure streets, especially for women. There is could be very dangerous for them in the areas, and there are car accidents once in a while in these hilly roads. And the informal and illegal connections regenerate and reproduce risks. These are some of the graphs and pictures from a handbook that we are developing during the project with the Work Package 3 team. And as you see, there are connections which are quite difficult, but there are people using GLP, this gas for cooking, but there is still, you know, the electric connections for appliances, and even sometimes some of the people, they do have bakeries and little business, and you know, the connections and the conditions are not good maintained or refurbished. So there is a gap between housing and energy policies. They are fragmented, siloed, and normalized. Municipalities work alone. The housing ministry goes with their codes on their own way, and the energy ones go also in their own way. There is no coordination. And the energy and housing are not considered a constitutional right in Peru, so but rather a demand or a service to be paid for at a high cost. And the national policies are not considering the current realities, including the self-construction process. For instance, this picture is showing the El Agustino, which is older, as I said, but the roads are very narrowed and the construction have pathologies. And, you know, Peru is a earthquake area. We are waiting for a very high, strong earthquake in Lima, and we don't know how this is going to resist. So the free market discourse dominates, led by national government and big corporations. The big corporations are providing the electrical connections. But however, there are new opportunities in housing regulations to improve access to multiple services, including decentralized renewable energy. There is a new law in urban development sustainability. There is a law also for distributive generation, which needs to approve a code so everyone can connect a solar panel in their house finally, and do not pay double, you know, to pay for the electrical company, but also to pay for the maintenance of their own panel system, solar panel system. So in terms of recommendation, we are trying to push on a policy change via concerted efforts with roundtables and workshop discussions to design an energy policy that favors low-income housing and includes the establishment of a multi-sectoral commission with the Energy Ministry, the Housing Ministry, the Environmental Ministry, the Planning Institute, the National Association of Municipalities, which are two, AMPER and REMURPE, the Association of Defense to Defense the Consumers, like ASPEC, OPECU, or CONUGAS, the approval of the distribution generation cost to this in-house renewable energy generation, the promotion of locally managed funds to provide soft credits to support improvements in energy and housing in low-income settlements, not only in our cases, but in general in the country, and to deepen the new housing and urbanism policies that support self-urbanization and self-construction, to design a strategy to protect and support regeneration of low-income neighborhoods and housing, strengthen the local governments to reestablish municipal housing programs for low-income families, which usually existed in the past, but now they are not in place. We can rebuild this policy, and provide technical assistance to finance and support self-construction in existing neighborhoods. These are some of the drawn pictures from the project also of El Agustino. You can see it's not that easy to live in these areas. And so we need to develop tangible improvements and recommendations for comfort and to reduce risk and energy consumption. And at household level improvement, but also at develop pilot projects at community levels, and to develop capacity building at all levels, communities, experts, authorities, policymakers. That would be a design, a proposal to be developed, and promote the South-South collaboration and exchange. We hope we can do some kind of exchange when people from Ahmedabad come to Lima to visit us in September, but then we would love to visit them too. But not only us, the experts or members of the project, but also to enable household level transfer between Ahmedabad and Lima communities. And the lessons learned on next steps we are finding out with communities are we have to involve local partners and researchers to support fieldwork and build relationships with local leaders. To map and monitor energy needs and consumption patterns in low-income houses, we have to understand how this works at the household level with their own household owners and people living there. That's why we're developing this handbook for low-income households to improve their capacities for energy efficiency, security, and the use of cleaner energy sources. and to strengthen the negotiating capacity of low-income households, for instance, in energy access, the tariffs, and the security. You have a very complex system of tariffication, energy tariffication in the country. So they can choose the best conditions for them and get the subsidies even from the government for the electricity connection or the gas connections and make cheaper their services. The training on the safe use of traditional fuels until modern energy infrastructure are more accessible, affordable, reliable, and secure is also something that we are thinking of to develop, because even there is people that were using gas, but it's so expensive nowadays that they have come back to use the good, again, carbon sources. And that's also another source of risk. So those are our proposals. Thanks for listening. And this is a reference in Spanish, if any of you knows, of a book chapter we just published.
Thank you very much, Liliana. That was really interesting, and I think a really good summary of the findings to date. Siraz, if I could hand over to you to make your presentation now, please.
Give me a minute. Okay. So in my presentation, I'm basically going to talk about Mahila Housing Seva Trust experience as far as issues related to housing and energy is concerned. And my presentation will focus on 4 important aspects. One is energy access, second is energy affordability, energy efficiency, and fourth, most important, I think, is the built environment and energy nexus. Particularly, the setting is informal settlements. So I think when we talk about energy access, particularly in India and generally in global South, I think for informal settlement, in India particularly, informal settlements are tagged as informal citizens just because the land that they are residing is not owned by them. And hence they are not provided access to essential services, including energy. But on the other side, the Constitution of the India guarantees the right to all the citizens, regardless of their land rights, for the access to essential services. So this is quite different from what we were hearing from Liliana. So what we did at the Mahila Housing Seva Trust in city of Ahmedabad particularly was to delink the provision of essential services from the land tenure. So we had a long conversation with the local administration and the private company who was providing energy services in city of Ahmedabad. And we were able to reach out to a situation where Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation, the local administration, were able to provide the interim land tenure for this informal settlements, where they guarantee that they won't be evicted for next 10 years. And they also issued the no objection certificates, which allows the private sector energy company to provide access to energy to this informal settlement. And with this kind of arrangement, the energy access drastically increases as far as informal settlements are concerned. And here I will like to highlight that in India, approximately 30% of the population in urban areas reside in informal settlements. So that's a big chunk that we are allowing access to legal energy connection through this modification. Second issue is also about affordability. So once access issue is resolved, I think we also need to look into the issue of affordability. And it was noticed that upfront cost for accessing the legal electric connection was much higher, and urban poor families were not able to afford it. So again, we started having the discussion with the electric company provider that if the upfront cost can be distributed in the 12 monthly installment as part of their energy bill, and we were able to negotiate that. And also we were able to negotiate a fixed cost as far as the upfront cost is concerned for energy access. So this allowed the urban poor to pay upfront costs in a duration of 12 years, which made the access to electric energy much affordable. There was also issue about the electricity bill, the energy bill that's were generated were bi-monthly, and hence the amount was coming very high. And particularly for informal settlement, we were able to negotiate if monthly bills can be generated, because that is a little bit more manageable for urban poor to pay on monthly basis. So these two aspects made energy a little bit more affordable for urban poor. I think this energy efficiency aspect is very, very interesting, that when people actually transit from illegal energy connection to legal energy connection, I think there is a need for behavioral change. When they are accessing the illegal energy connection, they pay a fixed price for almost unlimited access to electricity. But when they are transiting to the legal connection, they have to pay based on the units that they are consuming. And in our experience and in our field research, we have noticed that the moment they transit from illegal to legal connection, their energy cost is almost 3 to 4 times. And that deters many people, families in the informal settlement, to actually move back to the illegal connections. And to address this issue at Mahila Housing Seva Trust, we came up with a concept of micro energy auditor. So we started identifying women from the slum areas, and we trained them as a micro energy auditor. And these women will then audit each and every household in the slum, focusing on identifying the appliances that they are using, which are not energy efficient. Also, they will provide them the electricity map, where they will locate the bulbs and the fans in appropriate place, that you don't require multiple LED bulbs or multiple fans in a room. And that way they improves the energy efficient. On the other end, this micro energy auditors are also the micro entrepreneur. They are selling the energy efficient product. So at the end of the energy audit, if they find that there are inefficient or appliances which are not very efficient as far as energy is concerned, they will recommend them to move to the efficient energy appliances, and they will also be providing them if they want to purchase it. So that creates a livelihood for the women in this slum, and this model becomes self-sustainable. The energy audits are not only for the audit purpose, but it gives an opportunity for the women auditor to also create the kind of awareness that is required for a family to move from illegal connection to legal energy connection. So that behavioral change aspect is also addressed here. Third, and I think is most important, is I think we all know that in global south, particularly when you visit a slum area, these are very congested place, and the building material that is used by urban poor are generally from the waste material. You will see tin sheets and tarpaulins being used in informal settlement. Now this material generally absorbs much higher heat, and hence particularly in the summer, their homes becomes thermally very uncomfortable to reside. So if to give you an example, if an outside temperature is around 40 degrees Celsius, the inside temperature in the house will be around 43 to 44 degrees Celsius. So that's where we started introducing the energy efficient layout and space management. So a team of architects and engineers will visit these houses, and they provide them the better layout support so that the ventilation and lightnings in the houses can be improved. We also started recommending them better thermally comfortable building construction material like thermal roof and the thermal wall material, which improves the thermal comfort inside the house. Now, once the thermal comfort is improved, it directly leads to the reduction in the energy consumption and hence the energy cost that is incurred by urban poor. The fourth aspect is also about introducing energy efficient or the renewable energy appliances in informal settlement. So we started with the introduction of the solar energy sources, and we were doing the feasibility study before promoting it. So so in slum areas, you will generally notice that houses are also a workplace, or you will also see small workplaces operating from slum area where energy consumption is much higher. So wherever it makes business sense to introduce the solar rooftop, we were trying to do so. And that not only promotes the green energy, but also improves the profit margin as far as home-based work is concerned. So this was the strategy to address the built environment and energy nexus. The lesson learned through this process was that it's not that slum people are not willing to pay for the energy or not willing to go ahead with the legal electric connection. They are definitely looking forward to it, but it's more about making it accessible and affordable. Secondly, we need to create a conducive environment where electricity, being an essential service, is not linked with the land tenure. So most of the people and all the citizens can access it. On the other side, while working on this project, even the private electric energy company also started realizing that if they are taking interest in providing the legal electric connection to informal settlement, it is increasing their customer base by 30%. So it's a win-win situation for both. And energy is something which require a lot of education, awareness, and behavioral change aspect, and hence face-to-face interaction and house-to-house visits are very much essential when you are talking about energy transition, even when you talk about moving to a green energy. So overall, once the energy access was improved in the urban slum settlement, we have noticed that overall quality of life was improved. But as most of this slum household, almost like I will say 50 to 60% household use their home as a workplace, it has a direct impact on their monthly income and the livelihood sources. So we have also noticed that monthly incomes were improved by 15 to 20% on an average in the slum household. So I think it's a very important that we look at housing and energy very closely, because housings are also the source of livelihood for urban poor. Just to summarize my presentation, this was the approach that we had in terms of housing and energy nexus. So enabling the grid connection and promoting the low carbon efficient lighting. We also introduced the concept of energy auditor, promoting the renewable energy, tackling the issues of proper ventilation and the light. And yeah, the fifth but the most important is I think financial support. So when we talk about adapting the green energy by urban poor, I think financial support is most important. We all know that most of the mainstream bank don't provide credit services to these urban poor. So we will have to work out an alternate financial mechanism for them, where they can get the credit and they can pay the upfront cost through those credit mechanisms. So I think that financial aspect is very important. So that's all from my side, and I will be happy to take any questions, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saras. It's a really interesting presentation, and I think some really good outcomes as well. Before we take questions, I'm going to hand over to Uli to say a few words about the presentation that you hopefully have already seen on the video link, and to pose a question to us, I think. Uli, over to you.
Thank you very much. Just give me a second. I'll just share my screen. Yeah. Hello and a warm welcome to linkages between women's position in the household and energy choices. I just wanted to give you a small backup. My name is Uli Lich, and I'm here also in representation of my co-authors, Svenja Flechtner and Situ Pelz. And our paper is about the question, can we find evidence that men and women make different choices concerning cooking stoves and household appliances? And for this, we analyzed the link between women's positions in the household and the type of cooking fuel use and the appliances they have in their household. And we use 3 countries, which are on a different scale according to the Global Gender Gap Report. So the rather gender equal country is Rwanda. Then we have Honduras, which is rather intermediate, and a rather unequal country, which is Nepal. And we use the multi-tier framework survey from these 3 countries. And we find that in the more gender equal countries, Honduras and Rwanda, women as household heads seem to have no effect on the use of clean cooking stove. And in Nepal, we find that household heads and increased female decision-making power seem to increase the probability of a household using a clean stove. And in Nepal, so our results for our appliances show that in Nepal, households with higher female decision-making power are more likely to belong to the appliance-rich group. And in Honduras, we do not find that there is any effect of women's decision-making power on appliance ownership. And Rwanda, we find that descriptively that there is a share of female household heads is twice as high in the group where there are no appliances in the household. And of course, these households also have a higher, quasi-automatically higher decision-making power. But even after we control for the socioeconomic situation and the grid connection, households with higher decision-making power of women and those with the female household head are still in these groups where there's very low appliance ownership. And we don't really know what is driving this. So we would be really happy for your ideas for this. And like with this, I also come to the end. Thank you very much for your attention and for watching our presentation. And yeah, this is my question for the discussion. And I thank you very much for your attention, and I give back.
Thank you very much, Uli. Well, that's an interesting question. The results, at least on face value to me, look slightly counterintuitive, but then I think there are probably lots of factors going on. I don't know whether any of our colleagues on the panel would like to speculate about some of the other factors that might be at play here. Sarah, are you going to have a go?
Yes, yeah. So I will speak from my experience in India. So in India, it's very common. So I think women decision-making power is extremely important. So at Mahila Housing Seva Trust, we particularly work with women when we are working in slum areas. And the reason being that when you are talking about the energy and access to energy and also the quality of energy that is accessible to women or in household has a more impact on the women life than the man life. So as I mentioned it earlier that women, generally women in India, particularly in slum areas, they work from home, right? So they spend a lot of time from home. Secondly, their income is also directly related to energy access and quality of energy access. So if energy issue, or if women are empowered enough to make decisions, I think they do prefer to go ahead with energy efficient appliances. They prefer to go ahead making investment as far as green energy is concerned. Talking about cooking full and gasless chula in case of Ahmedabad, we have seen that those drives were actually led by women. So definitely where women are empowered, I think that word is very important. So when you're talking to women and women are empowered, a lot of decisions move in a direction of green energy and the productivity as far as livelihood is concerned. Yeah.
Your results seem to be saying something else, Uli. You were essentially saying there were greater numbers of appliances in less equal societies. But this could be the situation I think that Sheraz is referring to, where women spend more time in the home and therefore are more concerned about these things, but that is pure speculation. I mean, I could not venture any serious opinion on it.
Maybe I can give some background, some more background. So I think that the results on this are kind of not conclusive. So there are some results that say women take more action and they are more concerned with this, and some they say they don't. And in this Rwandan case, we are just a bit puzzled because, I mean, at least according to the Global Gender Gap Report, Rwanda is like one of the most equal countries. But I also started to do some more research on this, and what I found is that there are only 4 dimensions that the Global Gender Gap Gap Report is measuring. So if we look at Rwanda, we can see that, like, if you look at the political level, that there are a lot of women participating, but that maybe, I mean, we don't know, it's just speculation, that maybe on the like on the norms or the institutions, that there is not so much change. And that
I'm sure you're right. Measuring the gender gap is a sophisticated business, and 4 parameters probably doesn't cut it. I'd just like to pose some questions to the other presenters, if I may. No, that's fine. Thank you. So, Liliana, I was going to ask you, how do you think the results and outcomes from the work so far in the GemDev project might help to develop energy policy in relation to the informal developments?
Thanks for the question. Actually, we are, of course, remain to be seen the result, but we are planning to make this proposal to the government in the sense of establishing this multi-sectoral commission to think together how to improve the energy policy favoring low-income housing. And just this is something that it's being developed usually in Peru. Consultation is kind of established policy methodology, and multi-sectoral commissions are more or less, well accepted. So to think together and to develop this housing and energy nexus, it's something that we might be able to develop with them. Also, we would like to promote in the meantime, with these discussions and through this commission, the approval of the distribution generation code, which is already there. I mean, the project of this code has been developed already. It's already on, the webpage of the Energy Ministry. So we would like to give another push, but for that, probably it would take a little longer because there is a lobby of the big corporations, the energy big corporation, which work as on an oligopoly in the country. They control the whole energy, production and distribution and allocation. And finally, through these discussions, also get some funding from the government to the fund. I mean, to fund some soft credits to support the improvements we are proposing. Of course, we are going to propose that these 3 cases that we are developing in the research, in our research, should be the ones that to start the process. But the idea is to not only fund those housing or neighborhoods areas, but also other areas outside of Lima even, because that could be possible. And yeah, that's
sorry. Okay, I just wanted to give the opportunity to members of the audience if there are any questions, or indeed Uli, if you have a question, please.
I mean, if there's somebody from the audience, I would give the floor to them. Otherwise, I was just curious because you mentioned during your presentation that there was some training needed for some people to somehow know how they use traditional fuels. And I was just wondering what fuels you were referring to and what your experience was with this.
Well, as I mentioned, the people is coming back to traditional fuels in the sense of carbon. I mean, they are using wood, but not, I mean, there are no trees around there to provide with, leña, it's naming in Spanish. I don't remember the name in English, but the point is that they are taking pieces of construction parts or, demolishing the processes is given.
So it's processed timber.
Yeah, timber,
processed timber. Yeah.
Processed timber, or even the advertising in the streets, the big panels, they destroy them and they convert them into fuel. So with that, they are cooking right now. There are communal pots because of the pandemic. We have seeing how these communal pots have reappeared in the city, all over the country actually, and they are cooking on the streets sometimes even with this kind of fuels. So some accidents already are already happening, and we have to organize this in a better way so people can protect themselves, and also to protect them for, some people are selling this at very high cost. So we have to control this market system, informal also, but market at least, and, to make it accessible, affordable, and also reliable, because sometimes they get some sources of good that which are not good for cooking, and the security that the steps they have to take to avoid any accident, because fires and accidents in the hands, especially of the women, are happening.
Thank you, Liliana.
Thank you.
Just check if there's any questions from any members of the audience. If not, I'd like to pose a question to Siraz, and that's really, I wonder how you think the developments that you're looking at could gain greater access to clean, green energy sources.
Yeah, so I think government of India has a big commitment in terms of nationally determined commitment that NDC that made in terms of moving from fossil fuel to the renewable energy. And they are doing it in a large scale by promoting the solar energy. But unfortunately, again, it's done in a way they were trying to do the legal electric connection few years back. So those subsidies which government is providing to the household as far as the solar rooftop is concerned is again linked with the land tenure. So we are saying that there is a lot of demand, but it's mostly coming from middle class and higher middle class family, and poor are left out of this drive. So I think that's the issue of just transition. When we are moving to the greener energy, and if poor can't participate here, then we need to look at the policy in terms of how subsidies are distributed and how poor can be included. So we have already started negotiation with the government, and one positive development has been that in India, government is having this flagship program of Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, and these are the housing buildings that government is constructing for urban poor. So people who are residing in the slum settlements are provided the formal housing, and they have, as a part of their housing program, they have started providing the solar rooftop system. So the entire common electric consumption, the maintenance thing is coming from a solar. So in a way that part has been addressed. But in India, there are a lot of slums which are recognized slums, and they have their own land with them and their own building. Unfortunately, they are still unable to access this subsidy because of various terms and conditions that government has laid down in that policy. We are quite hopeful, and we had a couple of round of discussion with local and national government. I hope that that will be changed. But I think green energy transition, when we are talking about inclusion of urban poor, is very important issue, which as of today is not given due emphasis.
Thank you. Well, I wish you well with that. It's a very interesting development.
Actually, I wanted to make a question to Siraz.
Yes, please.
Possible.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
have
Siraz,
2 minutes.
it's quite interesting, these solar sources. I know this is new for us, or at least in Peru is quite new, and the subsidies for solar panels are something that we are thinking about too. But the cost of maintenance, is it high? Are you using it already? Do you know about it? Is it too heavy to be, managed? Because, okay, the installment might be one cost. That's why we need funds and credit for that. But the maintenance itself is difficult or too heavy?
Yeah, so there are two kind of solar rooftop systems that are available. One is on-grid system, and second is off-grid system. So in case of on-grid, you might be knowing, but just to summarize, on-grid system, whatever energy you are generating, it's actually transferred to the energy provider. And they then, if you are consuming, let's say 100 units, and if you have generated, let's say 90 units, then you just have to pay for the difference 10 units to the energy provider. So that's an on-grid connection. So Government of India is providing on-grid connection, and that's cheaper because in case of an on-grid connection, you don't require a battery backup to be installed at the site, right? So the cost is higher if you have to provide a battery backup in case of an off-grid connection. So I think on-grid connection is something that will work very well. But in that case, government, the private sector provider, and the household, that's an agreement that needs to be signed between the three parties. And that works very well, at least in India, for middle class and higher middle class. There are issues where private sector energy providers are not ready to provide the same services to the poor. They do have their own issues, which I think we need to discuss it and resolve, I think. But yeah, if you go for an on-grid model, it's much reasonable. The off-grid models are almost 3 times the cost in India, at least.
And just to sort of finish off on the maintenance costs, Liliana, with an on-grid system, the main component that fails is the inverter, but they tend to have a life of 10 to 15 years.
Yes.
And then the maintenance beyond that is cleaning the panel occasionally. And with a battery system, then you can have battery failure or battery degradation over time, so batteries need to be replaced. But those are intermittent costs, and therefore you need some sort of fund building up over time to cover those intermittent costs, which can be quite high but irregular. We're up against the end, I think. So I just want to finish. Oh, Uli, did you?
I would also like to ask 2 questions, but
Okay.
But I don't have to if we don't have the time.
No. I guess if nobody's wanting to rush away, we can have those questions. Carry on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I was just curious because I didn't totally get the background of your study. So, how was this project like? How was this project designed, or what was the intervention?
So is that to Siraz or to Liliana?
To Siraz.
To Siraz. Okay.
Yeah. And then the other question was if you could find that these micro energy auditors, because you said that all of them were women. Did you find out that their status somehow changed in the community? If they were seen differently, or if they kind of were empowered by this?
Yeah, so let me answer your second question first, and then I will come on the first question. So I think energy auditor, definitely we selected to train the women as an energy auditor because these audits are generally conducted during daytime, and in most of the slums in daytime you will find only women at home. So in case if you are sending a male auditor, the acceptance, particularly in Indian culture, will be a little bit less. Women to women interactions will be much more comfortable. That was the one reason. Second, our focus was also about how women can be more empowered as far as energy decisions are concerned. So when women is visiting, they are doing the audit. Another woman is also looking at that women and trying to understand, oh, these are the skills that women can easily acquire. This is somebody from their own community who has learned how to audit, and if they are providing any recommendation, so that auditor is not going to run away from that community next day. So if something is wrong, then they can actually again talk to them. So I think that trust factor is very high because they know that lady, it's from their slum and it's going to remain in the slum. So whatever recommendations she is providing, it will be taken with a high level of trust rather than any external person. And third important aspect is about creating the livelihood source for them also, right? So we wanted to set up a system which is self-sustainable, so not dependent on project funding or government grants. So energy auditors, when they're visiting and doing this audit, they are also generating the income if they're able to sell the energy efficient appliances to the family. And on the other end, families are getting this service for free almost, because audit is done and good recommendations are provided by a qualified person. So in all, it was like win-win situation for us. Yeah. And in terms of your project question, is it related to GAMDEV or the project experience that I said?
I just didn't totally understand.
So I was sharing the MHT experience, which came from a different project than this research project. So this project is called Slum Networking Project. It's a very well-known project by SNP. If you Google search, it has been a lot of awards from the international organization also. And the entire idea was that how this informal settlement can be provided access to all essential services, and energy was one component of it, regardless of the land title. So it was the result of an advocacy where government also agreed that, okay, we want to provide access, and we brought in the private companies also on board. And then it was done at a large scale. I think first phase covered almost 30,000 households in duration of 2 or 3 years, I think. Yeah. And this is quite long back. I think we started that project in 2009 or something like that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That sounds really interesting.
Okay. Any more questions? In which case, I want to say thank you very much to our presenters. Oh, one more?
Liliana, wasn't?
Did you sound?
I'm here.
I thought you wanted to ask a question, Liliana.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much to all of our presenters. Thank you very much to the team who organized and convened the session, Harsh, Julia, and Rita. And thank you very much to those of you who've joined us in this live session. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Yes.